Well, somehow, in some way, Johnson has managed to survive. And I've said this right from the start of all this, that Johnson has somehow this magical ability to survive scandals and situations that would have killed off far more competent politicians than him. Now, the primary reason for that is that many of his very own MPs think that Johnson has this electoral magic. And as far as they are concerned, if Johnson can win them this kind of majority again, they don't care. They know that having this massive 80-seat majority that they've got means that they can pretty much do anything they want and no one can stop them. And as far as they're concerned, if Johnson can keep delivering on that, they don't care. And that is ultimately what we saw yesterday. Now, there are Tory MPs that are absolutely outraged by this, and that is good. Unfortunately, it's the 2019 intake that I wanted to most turn against Johnson that would have been ultimately the key to throwing him out, but it seems that they have now fallen into line. However, there is a lot of insistence by Tory MPs to release the full Sue Gray report. So Johnson may not be out of the woods yet, but he's, shall we say, slightly close to the board of the woods than he has been before. But unless something significant changes in the next 24 hours, I think Johnson has survived this one. And ultimately, this is a fantastic opportunity for opposition parties because now you can turn around and say, look, your Tory MP didn't hold Johnson to account over his partying. If he's not going to hold Johnson to account over that, what is he also not going to hold Johnson to account over? And remember, there's the whole VIP stuff, the Lane scandals that have come out about that as well. There's so much more stuff you can attack Johnson on this. You know, if he's not going to, the levelling up stuff for anyone standing in the north can attack any of the northern Conservatives over the fact that Johnson has not delivered on his promise to level up. So there's so much that this potential damage can do. And of course, there are a lot of people saying that it's very unlikely Johnson may even go or stand with the Conservatives at the next general election. So there's still an opportunity that they may indeed get rid of him before then. But as always, this is a very developing situation. There's the full Sue Gray report to come out, which will be, again, very interesting to see. But needless to say, don't worry, we'll definitely be keeping on this. So, like I say, before we go jumping into today's article, please do remember to hit that like, share, and subscribe button. And of course, down below, there are links to my Patreon page and a one-off donation link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can, well, buy me coffee. And as always, thank you very much to all those people who do support the channel that way. So, on with today's story. So, this comes from The Guardian, with the title of, Are Tory MPs Willing to be Taken for Fools by Boris Johnson? Yes, some of them almost certainly are. When Aaron Bell attended his grandmother's funeral, he could not allow himself to hug his grieving parents and siblings. After she was laid to rest with only 10 mourners present in accordance with COVID regulations, he turned around and drove 3 hours home without stopping for a cup of tea, because those were the rules, and in the pandemic, they were to be obeyed. His questions to Boris Johnson on Monday afternoon was couched with tones of barely suppressed fury. Does the Prime Minister think I'm a fool? It's the guilt, as Keir Starmer had rightly noted earlier, in an extraordinarily emotional charged afternoon in Parliament that for many people is the heartbreaker, the gut-wrenching feeling that if a man who made the COVID laws just simply ignored them when it suited him, then maybe they too should have just defied the rules to be with their loved ones as they died. Great leaders inspire us to be better people, but somehow Britain has ended up instead with a leader who makes people actively regret doing the right and selfless thing. At this point, Aaron Bell could have been invited to illustrate if it weren't for the fact that Aaron Bell is a very real Conservative, and yes, you read that right, MP for Newcastle under Lyme. When it comes to the final emergement, when it comes to the final emerge on Monday afternoon, they hand over with all the ceremony of the tables and stone descending the mountain. Sue Gray's report seemed initially like the dampest of squibs, stripped of all the interesting bits in response to the last-minute concerns from the Metropolitan Police about it compromising their even more last-minute inquiry. It could have been otherwise. Yet, even in her deliberate, tense account of 1616, for heaven's sake, lockdown gatherings, noted for a whopping 12 of them, the Met Scotland Yard threshold for investigation, including a party in Boris Johnson's and Carrie Johnson's private Downing Street flat on the night that Dominic Cummings quit, and of course the Bring a Bottle garden drinks that we know that Johnson himself attended in May of 2020. The month Bell went to that funeral. It is now overwhelmingly clear that the Prime Minister told Parliament that no lockdown rules were broken in Downing Street when that was untrue. He lied to Parliament, a resigning offence, and is now under police investigation for breaking COVID laws he imposed on everyone else to boot. We must look to ourselves and look in a mirror and learn, Johnson solemnly declared, before disclosing that he had personally seen what was someone else should be to blame. There will be a structural reform of the Whitehall machine, offering a very convenient cover-up for disposing of senior civil servants whose positions may look untenable after the police investigation, which can then be simultaneously be sold to MPs as getting a grip on a dysfunctional number 10 machine. Given its dysfunctionality comes directly from Johnson himself, the only possible response is, does he really think his own party is that stupid? His predecessor certainly wasn't fooled. Theresa May, in a moment that felt as if it had been a long time coming, inquired very ilkily about whether the man who forced her out of office had failed to read his own rules, failed to understand them, or just simply didn't apply to him, in a manner suggesting that she felt all three were plausible. Her public denunciation, alongside that of Andrew Mitchell, the former chief whip, suggests that what remains of the old-school One Nation Conservative Party, the moderate rump who always had their reservations about Johnson, as distinct from those Brexiteers who only recently turned on him, and of course the newer Red Wallers such as Bell, is getting organised. Since it's only his own MPs can dispose of a leader of Johnson's majority, everything now rests on the sizable number who claim to be waiting for the Sue Gray report, as trying to put off the very painful discussion to unseat a sitting leader with very little clarity about who or what might succeed him. In every coup, there is always a core of MPs arguing that they just need to wait until after the local elections, or after the budget, or after anything else that seems reassuringly very far away. For some, waiting for Sue Gray could all easily involve waiting for the Sue Gray full report, which could be months away, and on the other side of a police investigation. The country, however, has waited long enough. What little Sue Gray could say about all these parties, she wasn't allowed to write about. And what there had been a serious failure to observe not just the high standards rightly expected of the government, but the basics expected of the absolutely everyone else in the pandemic, plus the failures of leadership and judgment, both in Number 10 and the Cabinet Office, merely confirmed the bleeding obvious that this is yet more that yet there's more than bad enough. And Downing Street's immediate answer to all this unconvincing fury of the Prime Minister's ministerial activity, touring, of course, the Eastern Europe and publishing a levelling up white paper meant to portray him as irreplaceable. But it's hard to reconcile this fantasy of an industrious statesman with stories of his red box lying unopened on a day outside the Downing Street office flats at the weekend, like a dirty breakfast tray abandoned outside a hotel room, with the lack of a serious long-term purpose that has left Whitehall departments and Parliament with too much time on their hands. The only real strategy seems to be trying to trudge on into a deeper mire in the hope that everyone somehow gets used to being covered in the muck, that we can somehow forget how outrageous Johnson is, and he seems to believe that he can just carry on regardless. How bizarre that should be with no formal mechanism for impeachment or even dishonesty. How enraging that we are all expected just to tolerate this degree of moral squalor at the heart of government for as long as his own party chooses to stomach it. It's true, as Johnson's allies says, that some voters are getting bored of hearing about parties when they face bigger problems in their daily lives. But a leader who seemingly can't even control what happens under his own roof lacks the very credibility to solve those problems, and sooner or later they will surely realize it. Until now, the most scrutined summary of the situation has been the former cabinet minister's David Davis call for Boris Johnson to, in the name of God, go. But Aaron Bell has added yet another. With those who hold Johnson's fate in their hands, are they really willing to be taken for fools? And I think the question is, we're just going to have to wait on this and what happens. I think if there's no vote of no confidence by the end of today, Johnson has survived this until at least the full Sue Gray report maybe comes out, and then we'll have to see what happens. But I'd like to add, this was far from a whitewash. This was very far from a whitewash. So I hope the people who have been saying that at least today have at least some egg on their face, because this report was indeed quite convincing that yes, there have been breaches, and yes, this did indeed come from number 10. Like I say, I think Sue Gray put it pretty clear that it was a failure in leadership. And guess what? The guy at the top is the leader. It is Boris Johnson himself. It's his failure of leadership. You couldn't put it any more clearer. The problem is now is that you have a Tory party with a massive majority that does not want to get rid of this guy, because it's exactly like we saw with Trump over in America. Time and time again, the Republicans, if they wanted to, could have chosen to rein Trump in, but they didn't, because they knew Trump was popular with their base. They knew that he could maybe, hopefully, win them the next general election, and they didn't want to rein him in. Meanwhile, they were free to get on with the many other things that they wanted to do. Mitch McConnell, for example, I think it's like almost like 200 and something conservative judges in like the lower courts, which is going to help conservative causes in America for years to come. As far as they were concerned, they weren't bothered. And unfortunately, you potentially are seeing the exact same thing here. The Conservatives do not care so long as Boris Johnson can deliver them victory. And so long as he can keep on doing that, he's pretty much untouchable. So, as always, thank you very much for watching. Please do remember to hit that like, share, and subscribe button down below. And of course, thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you all next time.